I mean, that man is responsible for the Central Park Five. Him and his mouth behind these boys said and had to do time in prison because of his comments. Because his, I mean, this man
they
has done
did. They did a documentary follow up to that.
One of them now is a sitting. I think he's a representative in New York.
You might want to watch that documentary follow up on that Central Park 5 story.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of details came out that I wasn't aware. Like the boys had semen and all that stuff on them too. They found semen on the girl. It was like a lot of other details came out.
They found semen.
Yes, a lot. It's a lot more of the details.
That didn't come out. I'll say this: if they guilty, they go to prison.
Who was the one? I mean, I don't want to give it. I don't want to give up the thing, but who was the producers of the film? Like, what was the angle it came from?
Give me one moment. I have to look up and see who the producer of the film
I remember
is.
seeing a documentary. Let's say, remember, I did have to watch it. One of them, I mean, why they
no.
Oh, you did send it. You did send it.
I think the one that you saw, because I saw the one along with you. That's by Ava DuVernay. But I'm talking about a one from a guy on YouTube.
It's a documentary, correct? Yeah.
And
they actually had the boys' testimony where the boys was actually before they got to the police station, some of the boys had already started confessing to it.
But see, that was one of the problems because their parents wasn't there.
No. Listen, what I'm saying is there's a total like you know how they had the 911 documentary when they were showing that all the buildings, then they had the Fahrenheit 911 where it showed holding up. There's a totally different perspective about it. Let me find it. I'll see if I can find it
and put aside so everybody can watch. Let me say one night. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden at all. Nor that I believe he has a brain in his head or a conscious brain. But what I was trying to tell me as far as the arousing of the violence here in America against one another. I mean, we have it on a daily basis, but with Trump, it was more. It was kind of more increased. He's an antagonizer. And when people antagonize people and have people fighting, this is how monies are stolen and moved. He came in and lied and told people that he was going to come in and he wasn't going to take a pay, and he took a pay. He created jobs for him and his daughter, his son-in-law. So Trump has a lot, and all of them dirty. You hadn't had one that's clean. Obama and the rest of them. But it's about doing business and being able to get business done, the people's business. And unfortunately, people don't support real candidates that will really stand up for their cause, putting people in with integrity. We know how the system works, and ain't what we say. Oh, if anybody getting there with integrity, they're just gonna kill them. We know this, so why don't we protect them? This is the part I get angry with our people for. We know this, so why don't we protect them? Why don't we fight to say, like, look, they'll fight for Trump. New Yorker, truck drivers know. I mean, trucking, so many truckers have lost. I had a truck driver call me today. He lost everything he had. And he told me he's going to still believe in what he believes in. He said, well, we all believe in the same God. We just call different names. I said, and the answer is no. I don't agree with what you said. He said, oh, that's right. I know you believe what you believe. I'm going to stick with what I believe. He's lost everything. He has nothing. He lost everything. He was doing good. I said, you're going to still stay with what you believe? He said, yeah. I said, well, all right. I said, that's what you do. You stay with it. It's working for you. But you're calling me, telling me you're broke. You ain't got nothing. You lost everything. He said, man, I ain't even got nowhere to stay. But he still tell me about this pigmentation God he got from his parents, that he got from a slave master, that he'll still continue to believe in. Don't realize this plays a part to your problem, and you don't have a solution. And we have to start stop looking to them. And I say this, and I openly to anybody, the so-called Negro in America needs to create his own way. I'm 100% for it. We need to just create our own way. Whites, Hispanics, Indian. Everyone needs, listen, there shouldn't be one president. There should be a representative from every one of these races to bring up the cause. Listen, I'm not the person that will be the best proponent for everybody Hispanic, because I don't know the needs of everybody Hispanic. I'm not the best proponent for everyone that's white, nor am I the best proponent for everyone that's Haitian, because I don't know all your ethnic history, nor am I that familiar or a part of your custom. Each one of us races, each race has a different thing about themselves and their custom, and it needs to be addressed. You need something like in Afghanistan and every other place, people have tribes, and they always have a representative for their tribe to make sure the issues of their people are being addressed. I am the person. That's right. That's right, Mal. That's right. Making your own way. I have been a proponent for this. That's not racism. That's to make sure we have inclusion. Because if your race is being missed, the needs are not being met. Someone needs to stand in to represent you to say, hey, I am of this ethnic culture, and we're not, our needs are being met or addressed. But when we leave it in the one white person hand who comes by and tinkle by and hand me a pack of fatback, he throw some Mexican, some tortillas, you know what I'm saying? He throws some Jamaican, some rice and peas. Then you're not really, this is a joke. You pushing rap music and breakdancing on me when that's not my problem. I don't need a white man to help me dance and sing. That's my culture. We got real needs and issues, and I get so upset with us because we always keep thinking it takes a white person to get something done. I don't need a white person to do nothing for me. All I need a white person to do is be white and take care of your own people. I'll address my people. If my people wrong or something, I'll address them. I'll say we wrong. I don't need to be chastised by no white person. I don't need to be hugged, collared, hung, drugged, insulted, or prepped up by nobody white or any other race.
Oh no.
Create my own way. As humans, we should all have a care for each other, but there's no way for one person to know the needs and to make sure the need of every individual race is being addressed properly. So every race needs a representative. Yes, sir.
All right, I found it. It's called the Central Park 5, Guilty or Innocent. It's very, very interesting because it's a black guy who did it. If it's okay, I just want to play like the first minute of this black guy talking.
Yeah,
it's called Central Park 5, Guilty or Innocent. And he made this as a rebuttal to that movie called When They See Us.
In this video, I'll go over some of the 200,000 or so case files, including photos, videos, and even examine portions of the fictional Netflix series When They See Us. In the rather one-sided documentary, The Central Park 5. I've also combed through dozens of articles written from 1989 up until today. All of my source files will be posted in the description, here, wherever it is. I strongly urge that you take a look because I will show the media has gotten quite a bit wrong, and the stories have morphed over time as people have come to favor the Central Park 5's version of the story over law enforcement and the district attorneys. What I hope to show you are simply the facts that led up to the convictions and what happened afterward. While I have my opinions, I think the facts of the case do a lot to explain the reasoning behind what happened to the 5 and to explain the problems with the running narratives as they've been fed to us by a very one-sided documentary and agenda-driven Netflix series. Now, if you're one of those people who just watched the Netflix series and thought that the information in that film was 100% gospel truth, you're sadly mistaken. I'm sorry. There are several deviations from the truth in the series. I won't even be debunking them all, but I will start off by bringing it up as it's the most recent accounting that many people have seen. So in that film, the first thing that stood out to me is the first 7.5 minutes prior to the opening title. Those 7.5 minutes introduce us to the 5 young men in the few moments leading up to them going into the park. It paints a picture of a fun-loving group of teens on a mission to frolic into Central Park to simply hang out. This was what first tipped me off that something was amiss about this series. So while the Netflix series paints a picture of these happy-go-lucky kids running into the park just to have a little fun as teenagers, the testimony of the teens that were questioned paints a much different story. Most of those who were questioned agreed that the reason for going into the park to begin with was to wild out.
Did he say what you were going to do on Wednesday night?
He said at 8 o'clock.
The series is called.
Hold on, stop. Why did you stop it right then?
Well, because it's an hour long. I just want to say
that was the wrong timing.
You know what, man? You terrible.
I keep playing it. No, that's not it.
Listen, focus for a minute. Just focus. Why would you stop it when they just asked the kid, we're going,
Like it's not your movie.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell y'all what. Y'all just when y'all want me to stop it, y'all just say stop, okay?
I just want to hear what the boy said. Let's hear this right quick. What they say about
Case due to the testimony of several of the young men who used that phrase during their questioning. They say, Lori, most of those who were questioned agreed that the reason for going into the park to begin with was to wild out.
Did he say what you were going to do on Wednesday night?
He said at 8 o'clock we was going to go wilding.
Wilding?
Yes.
Now, the term wilding or wilding was made famous during this case due to the testimony of several of the young men who used that phrase during their questioning. They say from their own mouths that they had hoped to find people in the park to beat up. Many of the kids talked about taking Walkmans from joggers and violently attacking people.
What was everybody wandering around the park for? What were they going to do?
I guess beat people up.
You're telling us that you went into the park that night to commit robberies.
Yes.
We went to the park for,
To what?
for trouble. We went to the park for trouble, we got trouble. A lot of trouble.
Why did you go into the park?
Well, I thought we was gonna beat people up and take bikes, cruise, and get money.
You went in to beat people up, to take bikes, and
Rob them, get money.
you were going with your friends for that purpose.
Yes.
What did Raymond tell you?
He said don't forget about Wednesday night.
Did he say what you were going to do on Wednesday night?
He said at 8 o'clock we was going to go wilding.
Wilding?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Whatever happens, like going around, hitting people, stuff like that.
I can't hear you very well. There's
Going around, punching, hitting on people, things like that. So he said let's go to the park and have some fun and bother some people.
Okay, Raymond said that.
Yeah,
When you went into the park, how many guys do you think there were altogether?
there's about 30 to 32
How do you know so exactly how many people there
because
were?
Raymond took a head count.
Okay. Was he in charge of the group?
He was trying to be,
Was somebody else more in charge?
not that I know of.
Everybody's going wild tonight. Everybody,
When did you first hear that everyone was going wilding that
that
night?
same day it
That's-
happened.
And you heard it in the afternoon?
Yeah,
Where did you hear it?
in PS 117.
Who was talking about it at PS 117?
Raymond
What's Raymond's last name?
Santana.
Raymond Santana. Now, you heard his name mentioned a bunch by these kids, and you'll hear his name a few more times as we go through this later. Basically, you hear him talking about how the group got together, how this all started. And what you'll realize is that Raymond Santana was named as the person who conceptualized the whole wilding thing and going out in the park and beating up people or robbing people or harassing or whatever they did. So I'm going to play a little bit more of this last gentleman talking about how Raymond had done this in the past, and this isn't even the first time that this thing had been going on. So apparently Raymond had taken a group to a carnival prior to that and done the same thing. Obviously not as severely, but he had organized the group before.
Right. And did you know Raymond before April 19th?
Yeah.
How do you know Raymond?
When I go around school, I think they be around there. And plus, one day, they went to go wild in Central Park. It was on a carnival.
Okay. Raymond talked to you about going wilding.
Huh? On the carnival? Yeah, but I didn't go.
Did Raymond go wilding at the carnival?
Yeah, a lot. They did a lot of things, beat up people. And my brother, he wasn't there, but he was at the carnival chilling out, and cops started chasing him and all that. And my brother just started running. The cops were going towards him, so my brother ran, and he got caught.
It's important to note here that he's speaking of an event that happened at a carnival, and the police knew about this because there was a victim at that carnival too. And that victim was named Eddie Rivera, and he had a concession stand, and I guess it was maybe a game stand because he had teddy bears and things of that nature at the stand. The boys from that wilding episode were trying to steal the teddy bears, and the man confronted them with a baseball bat. Apparently, they were able to take the baseball bat away from the man and commence to beating him until they broke his arm, and eventually somebody stabbed him in his side. So the police were aware of this situation, but they didn't put the two together until they came to interrogate a kid who was in Central Park, and this kid's name was Terrence T-Bone Campbell. Now, Campbell didn't incriminate himself in any of the park attacks, but he did end up doing 6 months for his admission of beating this man in the carnival. So he was convicted of riot and assault. And now back to Montalvo.
When you heard about going wilding on April 19th, you said you heard about that from Raymond. Yes?
Yes.
Did Raymond come up and talk to you about it himself, or did somebody else tell you that Raymond was organizing something?
I was sitting there and then, like, called me over and told me about it. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Raymond called you over to talk about it?
Yeah. We're gonna have your tone. We're gonna have everybody like your tone, boys. Went over there and everybody's saying, yeah, we're going wilding tonight. Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, everyone was saying, I'll be there.
Yeah, everybody.
Did you say you would go too?
Yeah, I said, I'll be there. I just walked off.
Right. Everybody knew you were going to go wilding, right?
Yeah.
So when you were saying, what are we going to do? What were you talking about? Where you were going to go wilding?
Yeah, like where we going to go. Something like that. Somebody's going to go to the carnival.
Somebody suggested going to the carnival. Where was that?
101st Street.
Was that the same place that Raymond had gone wilding before?
Yes.
And did someone suggest another place?
Somebody said carnival, Raymond said nope. And somebody said, let's chill right heads. Roam around right here, beat people up. And nah. Somebody said, Central Park.
Who decided to go to Central Park?
Raymond decided to go to Central Park.
Now that was Antonio Montalvo. He didn't end up being one of the Central Park Five, but one of the Central Park Five corroborated the same thing.
Who was leading the way?
It was Damon and Charlie and Andrew.
Whose idea was it to go to Central Park?
When I came, they was going to Central Park.
Now, I find it interesting that Raymond Santana would lie about this. Multiple people said that he was the leader and the person who got everybody together for this. Now, digging through some of the interview notes, I came upon an interview of a guy named David Monroe. David Monroe says this, that he knew Ray Santana and sometimes hung out with him. Wildin' was a regular activity for them. Different groups would meet in the park and bother people, pushing, shoving, taking their beer, etc. This is important because it shows us that Ray Santana was indeed a person who was set out to do crime and criminal activities that night.
Now, this group of young kids was about 30 deep. Some of them claim that there were over 40 teenage boys in the group that night. Many of them didn't even know one another. From watching the media's coverage of this, one might assume that the others were never questioned by the police officers or never apprehended. This part should stick out in your mind. 37 of them were brought in and questioned by police. Now back to the Netflix series. The image the series presents of this bunch is just some boys just being a little mischievous and getting in the way of bicyclists and joggers on the path. They don't show any robberies or violence, at least not from the five. Now, when I refer to the five, I mean the five boys that we now call the Central Park Five. We see a couple of them observe what seems to be a robbery under a bridge right before they run out of the park by sirens and police officers. They look on, horrified, as they witness this one particular event. Yet this event is unlike anything that was described in any way in the testimony. In their testimony, they're right there being a part of the violence and robberies. It's very interesting that this part is removed from the film. The other important thing is that there were at least 7 victims besides Patricia Miley, who was the only one who was raped. So it wasn't just this one incident that was witnessed by the five, as you can easily hear in any one of their interrogation videos. So why would the director Ava DuVernay portray it this way? Well, she has an agenda and she's not shy about it.
My goal was to humanize boys and now men who are widely regarded as criminals. And in doing that, to invite the audience to reinterrogate everyone that they define as a criminal.
You see, due to the fact that many people see these kids as victims, what they wish to do now is to strengthen the impact of that perceived victimhood by way of telling the story very differently from what evidence shows happened. This is going to be a lengthy video. Please bear with me. There is a lot of evidence to dig through.
Okay. Police operator 414. Full-race emergency.
Hello, this is Central Park Base. And we just got a call of a disorderly group, about 30 to 40 male blacks inside Central Park, approximately at 100th Street in the East Drive. They're acting disorderly and harassing people, passerby.
30 to 40 males?
About 30 to 40 male blacks.
Harassing passerbyers, right?
Right, disorderly group, large disorderly group.
Pick up of an assault at 102 and East Drive in Central Park. It's a roving band, Kay. The complainant was assaulted, Kay. 100th Street and East Drive, large disorderly group.
Large group inside the park, about 30 to 40 men.
Now, it's probably important that we go back and kind of get an idea about how these guys got arrested. Before we get into the crimes that were committed that night, we got to get into how they were brought in, because everything that we learn after they get arrested. So we're going to go from that point. And basically what happened is you had the police trying to round up, they got all these calls, and the police went and tried to round these kids up, 20 to 30 kids that were said to be in the group. Now we have a police, Eric Reynolds, who actually was able to discuss this. A lot of the cops weren't able to discuss it because they had gag orders at the time. I think some of them have passed away at this point, but Eric Reynolds is one of these people who was able to talk. He's a black officer, and he talks about exactly what happened that night.
We started getting numerous 9/11 calls. A large group of black and Hispanic youths assaulting and harassing people in the park. People were calling, 911, and people were coming into the station house. When we came out at 100th Street in Central Park West, there was the group right there, or at least part of the group. There's about 20 or 30 guys walking on the other side of the street, headed uptown. They were all together. It was a cohesive group. You could tell that they were, it wasn't random people walking at the same time. They were all together. We pulled up ahead of them and cut off the group. Everybody started running with the exception of Raymond Santana and Stephen Lopez. The two of them stood there. My partner and the officer in the scooter chased the rest of the group. I walked up to Santana and Lopez, and they immediately told me that the group was trying to rob them. Now, we had been sitting there watching them, and it was very clear that they were part of the group and that nobody was trying to rob them. So, because it was just me and them, I pretended to believe what they had to say, because otherwise, if I challenged them, if I told them I know that they're lying, they're going to start running.
Now, this is an important point here, because again, it establishes Raymond Santana as somebody who is not genuine, who will falsify a story. And later, Raymond will corroborate that story. We'll see.
Did you tell the police at first that you weren't with these people?
Yeah.
But that wasn't true.
Multiple times, Raymond Santana has lied on camera, and he seems to look very comfortable in his lying. I mean, his whole demeanor is a little bit cocky. I strongly believe that Raymond Santana was the ringleader of the group, and he has told lies. So so that establishes one person, one of the five, as a violent criminal and someone who was prepared to go out there and do violent crimes.
What most people don't consider is that there were more than 5 young men who were brought in for questioning. Some of them were charged with robbery and assault on other Central Park joggers who were not raped, but simply robbed and assaulted for the fun of it. Quite a few of those young men who were brought in also had videotaped interrogations, but were not implicated in the rape. Those who weren't videotaped still had their testimony taken in notes on the case.
So as it happens, all of those people who had their testimony taken told very similar stories. So you have 37 witnesses, so to speak, or 37 people who were a part of the victimization of at least a half a dozen victims in the park that evening. So one of the first victims was Antonio Diaz, and Diaz was referred to as the bum. They beat him up pretty badly and left him unconscious, and you'll hear that story here.
And we seen this old man, and then my cousin clotheslined him with his arm, and he fell, and other kids started rushing up to him, hitting on him.
They started to jump him, kick him.
I seen, from what I seen, it like they was beating somebody up on at the other end of the baseball field.
The dark-skinned kid came behind him, clotheslined him, and took his food.
My nose was covered. I opened rice. I don't like rice. I put the rice down. Opened there was chicken. So I grabbed the fork real quick, picked the chicken up, took a bite. Everybody said, "Ugh, you disgusting, Tony, disgusting. How you gonna eat that?" Like that. I said, "Fuck that, I'm hungry, man. I'm hungry. I ain't eating all day. I'm hungry."
Steven began to kick him.
Steven Lopez?
Yes.
The bum was lying in the road?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else kick him?
No, I remember them pulling him up on the sidewalk. I remember that. Pulling him up on the sidewalk and lying there.
How many times did Steve kick him?
At least 3 times.
Did anybody else join in? Did anybody hit him or anybody else kick him?
It might have, but I just recall Lamar and Steven hitting on him.
What were you doing?
I was watching.
You'll notice that most of the boys who tell this story say that they were just watching. That seems to be the same from most of them. A couple of them will say that they did something. I think Corey said that he kicked as well, but that was his second testimony. He went back and revised his testimony, and what I played there was that second version. So as you can see, there's a pattern. These kids all witnessed this, and there's no coercion going on. There's nothing that is being fed to them. So this is something that happened. And, it establishes a pattern for the night. That night was about hurting people and doing wrong for reasons of just having fun. Now, before I go into the other attacks, I want to point out a couple of things that some of these kids say. A couple of these kids say about Yusuf Salaam. Now, Yusuf Salaam is the most outspoken one of the group now in his 40s. He's wears very gaudy jewelry, and he's all dolled up in his suits and very well spoken. So he's obviously an intelligent kid, and now an intelligent adult at 40 something. I went to see him and Raymond Santana speak at the local university here, and he mentioned a ninja star and people wanting to criminalize him because he had been caught with this ninja star. But it wasn't just a ninja star. He actually also had a butcher's knife. So while he was at the university giving a speech and saying, "Oh, it's so silly that they think I was this criminal because I had this ninja star," well, it wasn't just a ninja star. I mean, a lot of kids have ninja stars as toys, and some kids even have pocket knives. But a kitchen knife is not something you're going to run around with because, you can't fold it. It's just not something that you would expect somebody to run around with unless they plan on doing damage with it. And it just so happens that people who didn't even know Yusuf out there in Central Park that night saw him holding a knife. So we have now evidence of Yusuf having a history with knives. And this wasn't the only knife. When he got locked up, they found a knife in his wallet, a blade in his wallet. And he had a keychain with a bird, and it had a bird-shaped knife. So he had multiple knives, and there's an article that says that the majority of his friends knew him to carry lots of knives. In this clip I'm about to play, you'll see Stephen Lopez mention that that night he was wielding a butcher knife. And that is important because one of the lacerations on Patricia Miley happened to be a cut laceration. Yusuf being seen with a knife or being mentioned with a knife here is important. Moreover, this is not the only person that mentions him having a knife, but for time, I'm going to only use this clip here.
Like the jogger was running by, and they tried to cut him off, and Yusuf, he was carrying a kitchen knife on him, but he kept running by, and they tried to cut him off, but he was too fast, so Yusuf took out his knife and tried to cut him.
Was he able to cut him?
I don't know. You couldn't see. I really couldn't tell because I was going to the back.
What could you see him do?
But he said like this. He said like this, and the driver has to like this. I don't know if he cut him or not. And the driver kept running.
Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip some of the other descriptions of attacks. You're welcome to check them out yourself. Again, I will have all this information posted in the description where you can find all these videos. They interviewed quite a few of the boys that were there that night and got them to get on tape. Their parents were there.
And is this your father who's seated next to you?
Yes. Some of them you can actually see their parents or hear their parents. This Netflix series seems to try and make you believe that the parents weren't there, but they were there. Woo! Let's go to the third jogger that they beat up right before they made it to Patricia Miley. This jogger got it the worst. His name was John Laughlin. And we're going to go with that rather than go over the other two joggers. There's other two joggers that they really highlight the beatings that they took as well. But the one who got it the worst besides Patricia Miley was John Laughlin. And I think that he's a good one to highlight here.
Well, anyway, after that jogger, there was another jogger that had an army jacket on, and he had long pants on, and he was jogging slow. So all the guys out in the front, like the big guys, they was like, yo, let's get this one, man. He running slow.
Everybody got down and started beating him up.
Did you start beating him up too?
Yeah.
Did you punch him?
Yeah.
Did you kick him?
No, I just punched him.
You punched him in the face?
Yeah.
Hard?
Yeah.
A lot of times?
Yeah.
A couple of times?
No, either.
Just a few times.
Like once or twice.
And everybody was punching him and kicking him? Did anybody have a weapon?
Well, that kid that had the white on, he had a knife.
What kind of a knife did he have?
Some kind of knife. What did
it look like?
I already seen the hand. It was like a brown handle.
Okay, you're going like this. Was it a round handle? Did it have a curve in it, or was it just a straight handle?
Like a straight handle.
He didn't pull it out then?
No.
Then Yusuf came. Yusuf had a solid metal pipe on it, wrapped up in some black tape. So he came up and he started hitting the man with it in his back.
Where did he hit him?
His back.
Was the guy standing up or lying down?
Nah, he was on his knees.
He was on his knees?
Yeah, he was like this. He was on his knees. So Yusuf was hitting him on his back.
Was he saying anything when he was hitting him?
He's like, stop, don't hit me.
What was Yusuf saying?
He wasn't saying nothing, he was just hitting him. So then Raymond was hitting him with a stick.
Raymond Santana?
Yeah, he was hitting him with a stick.
What kind of a stick? Like from a tree or a piece of wood?
Piece of tree that was about this big, like a branch.
A branch?
Yeah.
Antoine had this little steel bat. Not a bat. It's like a pipe or something.
How big was the pipe?
Looking like this.
Okay, was there any, was heavy? Was it solid?
Yes.
Was there any tape on it?
Yes. Black tape.
Where was the tape? All along it or just on one end?
All over it.
Yusuf, he had some kind of iron stick, some iron. I don't know if it was a stick, it was iron, and it was at least 14 inches and had black tape around it.
So the Antron ran up to him, and with the iron thing.
Where did he hit him with it?
In the forehead.
He ran up behind him and hit him in the front of his
No, so he ran up to him, hit him in the forehead.
Notice how he stopped to correct her. Now, would someone who's getting coerced stop to correct the interviewer? No. He knows what happened. She doesn't. He's correcting her because she's getting it wrong, and he needs to correct her to tell her exactly what happened.
Did he say anything when he did that?
Nothing, just hit him. And everybody started running out.
Running out from where they were hiding, where the jogger was.
Yes.
And what did Antron do then?
He kept on hitting, and the blood was like coming out.
They ran over to us. The whole group of them ran over to us. And that's when they began to say stuff like, they kicked his ass, that was Yusuf, and Antron gave him back the pipe. And the kid Raymond, he said that he broke his stick while beating the man. I think it had to be wooden stick then. He said he broke his stick.
Now you may notice some slight differences in the stories, talking about the pipe and who had the pipe. It was Yusuf and Antron who were mentioned. And you'll hear Clarence Thomas kind of clarify that in this clip that I'm about to play. But you'll also hear that some of the boys minimize their part in the beating, especially Raymond Santana, who says he only hit the guy with his hand once or twice. He doesn't mention the stick, yet two of the others talk about him having a stick and having bragged about breaking the stick on the man. So again, Raymond Santana at this point is not a reliable source. We know that.
So the pipe that you had seen Yusuf with, after this assault of the jogger was over, you saw Antron with that pipe.
Yes.
Now the police described the wounds that Laughlin took as a result of what these kids are talking about as pretty severe. I mean, I think he was knocked unconscious, and when they found him, when they saw him, they said that his head looked as if it had been dunked in a bucket of blood. That was the descriptor that they used. So his injuries were pretty serious. Now, they weren't life-threatening, but they were serious. And now we need to go into the event that everyone knows the Central Park 5 for, and that is the rape of Patricia Miley. This is difficult. She was hurt pretty badly, but things that you should pay attention to is the fact that their stories are pretty consistent with how they've told stories about these other joggers. These things did happen. These boys did describe these events like they appear to have happened, same way that the joggers described them. The only person that couldn't describe what happened was the rape victim. And we fill in those gaps with what these boys say until you hear testimony from Mateus Reyes, which we will talk about later, and why that's important or not important, or how they all fit together, which is very interesting and completely worthwhile for you to stick around. So bear with me. We're going to go through Patricia Miley, and we're going to go through some of the incredible stories that are now seen as the truth, but have some questions that have never been answered nor asked. You see these kids on TV and nobody asks the hard questions for some reason. But there are some hard questions, and we'll get into those as well. So let's go.
Did anybody say anything about looking for a woman jogger?
Stephen, earlier, that was earlier.
What did he say?
He said something like, let's go get a woman jogger. I remember that.
How long? Well,
remember earlier when I said that as we climbed up the rocks, some left, made like they were leaving, some left. Stephen was one of them.
A lady jogger came.
Was she running on the road, or was she running on the same path the man jogger had been running on?
She was on the road.
What did the lady jogger look like?
She was short. She had short hair. She had gray short, black biking pants.
Raymond ran back of her, and she looked back at Raymond. And she started running a little fast. Steve came out towards the front and grabbed her from the front.
They caught her and pulled her shirt over. And
Who caught her first?
Antoine.
And
Steve and Raymond was beside me.
when they caught her, what did they do to her? Did they grab her? What did they do?
He pushed her, but he still had a blast. He pushed her with the glasses. She fell on the floor.
Did she fall face down or backwards?
She fell like this.
So that her face was down on the dirt?
Yeah.
We got her on the ground. Everybody started hitting that stuff. She was on the ground. Everybody stomped and everything.
So from there, they brought her body way down there. That's where the blood was at.
How did they get her down to where you found the blood?
They dragged her.
How did they drag her?
They dragged her from her feet and dragged her down the rest. Her back was on the grass. They just dragged her down the rest. They dragged her down. That's when Steve stripped her clothes with the knife and everything.
Lopez smacked me in the face.
Was she screaming?
She was just hollering like, help.
And
smacked.
You said that Kevin knocked her to the ground? He tripped her?
Yeah.
What happened to her when she was on the ground?
Lopez came, and he was holding her by her arms, he pinched her arms with his knees, and then he covered her mouth with his hand. And then she was still screaming, so he started smacking her.
What did he smack her with?
His hand.
Where did he smack her?
In the face. Smacked her in the face.
Where was he in relation to her body? She was lying on the ground.
Like this.
And he was behind her head?
Yeah.
And he was holding her hands? You said that he was kneeling on her arms?
Yeah, on her arms.
And what was he doing with his hands?
He was covering her mouth. Every time she was talking, he was smacking. He said, shut up, bitch. Kept smacking her.
How many times did he smack her?
I think twice, 3 times.
And did she keep screaming?
And he just kept smacking.
Did somebody stuff something in her mouth?
No, he picked up the brick and he hit her with the brick twice.
Where did he hit her with the brick?
Around her face, around here, or somewhere up here.
When he did all that, I didn't want to just sit right there and look at what's going on. I didn't want to look like no. If you with them, you got to show a little effort around them too.
And then we got each of like I grabbed one arm, the other kid grabbed one arm, we grabbed the legs and stuff. And then we got also someone's getting on top of.
I'm sorry, you have
Parents getting on top of.
What was Kevin doing while Steve Lopez was holding her hands and hitting her with the brick?
He was having sex with her.
What did you see him doing? Was he on top of her?
And Steve had her leg. That's the Antoine on the top of her.
When he was holding her legs, was he holding them apart?
Yes, right.
Did she still have her shoes on?
No.
What did Antoine do then?
And took the chains off and had sex with her.
You still had her arms, and me and Kev was playing with her.
What were you doing when you were playing with her?
Huh?
What were you doing?
I was playing with her legs.
What were you doing to the legs?
Huh? I was going up and down her legs. I wasn't doing as much as they was doing. Steve ripped her pants with his knife. That's what made her mad. And that's when she started scratching. Listen there, Kevin. She was yelling pretty loud. She used to close their mouth. They had bigger heads than us. Close their mouth.
I got in the way. She kind of scratched me a little bit. It wasn't the face.
Let me just ask you, you're saying that she scratched you and you're indicating a place on your face?
Yeah, I think somewhere right here. It wasn't big.
Is that the mark that's right here on your cheek?
Yes.
So she reached out, she scratched you?
Yeah.
Did anybody have a weapon?
Yeah, black pipe.
You're making a sign about how big the pipe was. What is that? a little bit less than 2 feet or about 2 feet long? Is that what you think?
About 2 feet long. It's small.
And what was it, a stick or a pipe?
It's a pipe.
Who had that pipe?
At first, I don't really know. I don't want to bring nobody. I don't really know, but I think the tall black kid had a pipe. But I don't really know.
Kevin hit her in the face with the rock. That's what knocked her out. Definitely knocked her out. She thought it was a punch, but it was a rock that hit her. Steve was using the knife to cut her legs. I don't know how he was doing it. He was using cut her legs. Half of them was using their nails to cut her legs. And me and Yusuf, since Kev and Steve and Raymond was acting wild, me and Yusuf stayed to the side. Even though we were playing with her, we stayed to the side. They were acting too wild. They were swinging on her and everything.
Now that's a lot to
I'm
deal
good.
with and listen to. Some of the stories vary slightly, and some names were not often mentioned. Yusuf Salam's name was not often mentioned. It seemed like he was not into the situation, though he was there and he did take part. But Corey's story, while everyone seems to have a bit of a problem with his testimony, it seems to ring the most true, and he gives the most detailed version of the story. And rather than play anymore, it's a lot for me to deal with. I'm going to move on to some of the issues that you should be paying attention to here. One issue in particular is the lack of any testimony from Steve Lopez. Now, we're going to look at what he said in a moment, but what you'll notice is that Steve Lopez denied any wrongdoing. He denied he was at this scene of the rape, while you heard his name mentioned probably the most of anybody from these other guys. There was also one mention of Michael Briscoe, who was also questioned about being there, and his response was the most telling of them all. He sat there in silence for a couple of minutes, did not answer any more questions after they tried to place him at the scene of the rape.
I don't know what happened to him.
So both of them stopped talking. That's notable. But let's have a look at Steve.
Every single person says that you were with them when this woman was raped.
Ice cold.
Every single person says that. So I asked you in the beginning of the statement if you want to tell me the truth about what happened. And I want to hear the truth about what happened. But I have to ask you if these are people who are either friends of yours or who have no beef with you. Why is everybody saying you were there?
I don't know. I don't have no arguments to I get along with everybody.
So they have no reason to make it up, right?
I don't know why they did it, because I wasn't there. They said I was physically there, that I was holding the lady down. I ain't even seen no lady.
See, he is ice cold with this. Now, he did say one thing that kind of messed him up. He said, if they say I was holding the lady down, she never mentioned them saying that. So
right.
He kind of gives himself away by saying that, in my opinion. The question I'm asking is, if there's coercion, how come they couldn't coerce these two or the other folks that they interviewed? The Tony Montalvo also gave a response that was, I wasn't there. Montalvo is certainly my favorite of all the interviews to watch because he's animated, he likes to talk, and he frustrates the hell out of Elizabeth Lederer in this clip that I'm about to show you. So it's quite entertaining to hear him talk, whereas some of the others are a little bit dry. But his interview just reminds me of people who engage in these type of behaviors. Friends of mine when I was a kid I know people like a lot of these guys. So when you hear this exchange, he's frustrating the hell out of Elizabeth Lederer because he basically told her that he hadn't seen any weapons that entire night until the end when someone tries to hand him a weapon that he doesn't want to hold because he doesn't want to get fingerprints on it. And she rightly asked him, well, why would you be worried about it if you didn't see anybody use a weapon? Watch.
Why didn't you want the pipe?
Huh?
Why didn't you want the pipe?
Fingerprints.
You were afraid that there'd be fingerprints on it?
Yeah. I knew they had to do something with that pipe in the park. Hit somebody, so I wouldn't want my
How do you know
fingerprints.
that they used that pipe in the park?
Huh?
How do you know that they used that pipe in the
They
park?
brought it to the park, so they had to do something with the pipe.
How do you know they brought it to the park?
Huh?
How do you know they brought it to the park?
Then Antoine didn't have the pipe when I
How do you know he didn't find it on the street?
Huh?
How do you know he didn't find it?
I don't know, but I know when I went up to him and said something, he had no
Tony.
weapon on him.
Tony, you want to tell us about it?
I'm dead up when I said something to Antoine, he had no weapon on, he had nothing in his pocket.
Yeah.
I said something to him, he had nothing, he had no weapon. Nothing. Alright, so how you gonna end up with a
You
pipe?
just spent almost an hour telling us about what happened in that park, and I asked you at every point, did anybody have a weapon? And you said no. I asked you if the reservoir was there a pipe. You said no, I thought it was a stick. All of a sudden, you're out of the park, someone tries to give you a pipe, and I said, why didn't you want it? And you said you were afraid there'd be fingerprints on it. Why would you care if there were fingerprints on it? From what you're telling us tonight, you didn't have any reason to think it was used in a crime, but you knew that it was used in a crime, didn't you?
Nope.
You knew that it was used to beat the female jogger on
Nope.
102nd Street.
Nope, I wasn't there on section when they beat the jogger.
There's 3 people who were supposedly there that they have on video who, despite all this coercion talk, were not coerced to talk. So why did it work on 4 but not the other 3? And the answer is because there was no coercion. And there was an investigation that stated just that as well. There wasn't coercion. What there was a whole lot of damn evidence. And it's unfortunate that, you know, these movies, documentaries, and Netflix series do not show the evidence. So let's go over the evidence. When those kids came out of the park, they were confronted by Officer Reynolds and his partner and the other female officer who was on the scooter. They were able to catch 5 of them. Michael Briscoe,
It's like a fan.
Kevin Richardson, Santana Lopez, and Clarence Thomas. Out of those young men, Clarence Thomas gets put in the backseat of the car and starts crying.
2 of the kids were crying and saying, I didn't do the murder, but I know who it was. It was Antron McRae, and I'll tell you where he lives.
Did you start to cry in the police car?
Yes.
And did you start to say something to the police?
That's what I'm going to ask, yes.
Did you say that you knew who the murderer was?
After they had said that the person was essentially dead, that's when I said that.
What did you say?
I said that I know the person who killed him. You know, I was crying and stuff. Because I remember as they came back, I seen Antron with the pipe, and they were saying that he was beaten over the head. And I figured it was Antron since he came back with the pipe.
Did you tell the police it was Antron?
Yes.
Now, when they said they didn't do the murder, my assumption, we all assumed, that they were talking about the gentleman, and this guy was a teacher, his name was John Lockwood. We thought they were talking about him because he was beaten so badly, we assumed that they thought they killed him.
So this is the beginning of these kids beginning to incriminate themselves. And a lot of people think that the police coerced these kids into talking about this stuff, and they did not. They offered up this information voluntarily, as you just saw with Clarence Thomas. He admitted to beginning to cry in the police car, and automatically he goes into telling on himself, telling on everybody else that's there. Who starts to snitch next? And the next person who starts to confess is Kevin Richardson. They had found the body of Patricia Miley. Well, I wouldn't say body because she was alive, but they found her very badly beaten. And so they needed to find out if anybody who was in the park at that time saw anything. So they wanted to question the boys because that's just police procedure. So they questioned two of them, Clarence Thomas and Lamont McCall, with their parents, and they didn't know anything. So they let them go home. Kevin Richardson was the third person that they questioned, and Kevin Richardson had a scratch on his face. So the police asked about the scratch.
Now, contrary to popular belief, we did not ask him about the female jogger. That's not the way that we operate. We get their full statement first, and then we go back and we ask them more questions. And the thing that we do is we get the answers before we ask them the questions. This way we know when they're lying. He had a scratch under his eye. And one of the detectives said to him, well, how did you get that scratch? And he said that my partner, Bobby, scratched him when he was arresting him. So the detective said to him, okay, Bobby's next door. I'm going to go ask him, and you had better be telling the truth. At that point, Kevin Richardson said, okay, it was the female jogger that scratched me. When he said that, because none of us were expecting it, it was almost like a bomb went off. Now we realized, okay, we got a different problem on our hands. We just let two of them go.
So this point is very significant because they didn't tell Richardson about the jogger. He didn't know about the female jogger. He simply gave that information up. Now, this is what sunk the ship. The whole Central Park 5 ship was sunk by Kevin Richardson in this moment. And you have to remember, when Corey was giving his testimony, he also talked about Kevin getting scratched in the face by the lady.
Steve ripped her pants with his knife. That's what made her mad. And that's when she started scratching him. What's the name? Kevin.
Now, when did they get together and share this story to tell the police officers? Now, if you watch the Burns documentary, they act like he got hit by an officer. And this never happened. But then you have to think about how they two would get together and come up with concoct this story of him getting scratched by the jogger. Both Corey Wise mentioned his face getting scratched, and he mentions it himself. And then later, when they're doing the documentary, they act like this never happened, like they never came up with this stuff. It's amazing. Now, this is what the Netflix series doesn't tell you. This is what the Ken Burns documentary doesn't tell you. This isn't what the Central Park 5 book tells you. None of them tell you this significant piece of information, but it is the loose lip that sunk the ship, so to speak. And they all went on to tell on one another. These guys are the most celebrated snitches in Black history. But eventually, it wasn't just about them talking on camera or behind closed doors. At some point before he was picked up, Corey Wise was telling people in the street that the police were looking for him. He was approached by two of his friends, Ronald Williams and Shabazz Head. They were told by Wise to get the hell away from them because the police were after him. So they walked away. But a little while later, they ran into him again and they asked him why the police were actually after him. And Wise responded, "You heard about that woman that was beat up and raped in the park last night? That was us." So he told Shabazz Head and Ronald Williams this who later got on the stand and testified to this. Later, just before the trial, Corey was on the phone with Melody Jackson, who is the sister of one of his friends, and he called from jail. So apparently Melody didn't want Corey to do any prison time. She wanted his court case to go well. She took this call from Wise from Rikers Island when he was in Rikers. She asked him, "Hey, Corey, did you do what the newspapers are saying that you did?" Corey's response to her was that he didn't rape anyone. He only held her legs down while Kevin cuffed her. Now, this woman, Melody Jackson, thought that this information would be helpful to Corey because it proves that Corey was innocent. He didn't have sex with the woman. However, we all know that holding a woman down while someone else penetrates her it makes you an accomplice. So you are an accomplice to rape. So even with her doing that, and she did testify as well. She had testified to this had this conversation, and the phone records do show that he made that phone call. It also must be noted that none of the boys admitted to having sex with the jogger.
Right.
They may have simulated sex, but they didn't penetrate her.
Then you got on top of her. Did you have your pants down when you did that?
No.
Did you have your fly open?
Yeah, but my penis wasn't in her.
What happened?
I just, my penis wasn't in her. I didn't put nothing in. I didn't put nothing to her.
Well, when you got on top of her, you got on top of her so that you could have sex with her, right?
Not really. I just doing it so everybody know. I wasn't really doing it.
You said you were just doing it so that everybody what?
Everybody just know I did it.
Well, I haven't noted you. When you got on top of her, you had your penis out of your pants?
Yes.
And it was between her legs?
No.
It was against her?
Yeah.
And did you rub against her?
Yeah.
Did you have an erection?
No.
There was also lots of other evidence, blood evidence, which again doesn't get mentioned by the media. So there were blood stains on Santana's right sneaker, Yusuf Salam's jacket, and on Lopez's underwear. There were also semen stains that were found in the underwear of McCrae and Richardson. And somehow Santana had semen on his sweatshirt. And then there was the evidence of hairs. They found hairs that were consistent with the female jogger's hair on Kevin Richardson's clothing and on Stephen Lopez. If that wasn't enough, you also had soil on the victim, McCrae, Santana, and Richardson. Now, it should be noted that DNA evidence was a new science. It had only first begun to be used in 1985 overseas and came to America in 1987. That's just 2 years before the Central Park case. Furthermore, the methods used to get trace evidence changed considerably in the 1990s. So in this particular case, you find that there's a lack of conclusive evidence on the blood. So all the blood that's found on them, for the most part, was inconclusive. They don't know whose blood it was. But the fact that they had blood on them at all, and semen, should give you some amount of pause, especially when some of it was found in their underwear. So as you can see, along with the testimony You had physical evidence. Why is that not in the Netflix series? Why is that not in the newsreels? Why is that not being asked of these guys when they do interviews? Because people don't want to hear the truth. That's why.
Whoa.
That brings us to the crown jewel of this case, Matias Reyes, who supposedly has cleared their names. Everybody believes that now that there is Matias Reyes, who came out and confessed that he did this rape by himself. Now everybody thinks that, oh, these guys are innocent. And people are calling them the exonerated five. They're no longer the Central Park Five. They're the exonerated five. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is that they were never exonerated. Their case was vacated.
Mm-hmm.
Having a case vacated is different than having a case exonerated. Exonerated means that you're innocent. Vacated does not. Vacated means that basically erases the whole court procedures. And being that they already did their time, it didn't matter. What people don't realize is that they knew that there were no DNA matches when they got locked up. They knew that there was DNA out there. They got a sperm sample from her rectum and in her cervix. And that sperm sample didn't match any of the boys. So they already knew that somebody was missing. It's not like this was a revelation. The only thing that was new was you having someone say, I did it alone. That was what was new. And that brings you to the interviews of Matias Reyes.
Was she wearing a bra?
Good question. Maybe not. I can't remember that.
Can you give me a description of her?
I'm not gonna lie to you. The most I remember was pants and I can't remember exactly how long the hair was and all that. It's like I remember is putting her pants down and I don't think I took them off.
You don't think you took
I know I lifted her up and I didn't pull my pants all the way down and I did what I had to do and I let her back down and I did generally and
Did you roll her over on her stomach at any point?
I can't remember if I did that.
How about shoes and socks? What's with them?
I'm assuming it's jogging shoes.
Okay. And you did not take them off, I assume?
I don't think that I was trying to. I don't know. I definitely wasn't trying to find out, if I told her pretty or not.
Okay, so it's been some time since these things have happened. Granted, I'll give him that. But there's a lot of things that he doesn't remember. Most specifically, her hair length. He talked about running behind her and zigzagging for a long time to keep up with her and to be elusive. He did this zigzagging stuff. How did he not remember what her hair length was? While on that night in 1989, Kevin Richardson gave an accurate description of her hair length.
What did the lady jogger look like?
She was short. She had short hair.
So you started running after her?
So basic, once I get to a certain area, my hair stops zigzagging or whatever. Try to keep.
Why were you zigzagging?
Because, sometimes, who knows if they look back or whatever. So I just, because they got outside of the road, they got trees and all that there too, power. But she was jogging that fast. And when she got around the turn, I was still jogging, walking things like that on the road, and then I would bounce back over here, and then I would go this way, she went this way. But we always maintain a certain distance, like timing the distance, like stopping.
Yeah. How big a distance are we talking about?
maybe a room, 2 rooms, or maybe like 2 rooms and 2 rooms like this.
It should be noted that they did a reenactment of this zigzagging and it didn't fare well. What you'll see is that he picks up a branch, much like he claimed to have done that night. He claims that he hit her in the back of the head with the branch, and that is how he basically caught her. He knocked her down with this branch, which doesn't seem nearly as likely as her being surrounded by a group of boys who could overpower her. She's much faster than Reyes would probably be. He also mentioned her shoes and socks, not taking off her shoes and socks. But at the crime scene, we have a picture of one of her socks. And of course, they got his semen off of one of her socks that had the insole laying there. So why does he not remember that? Mind you, I'm not trying to say that he wasn't there. Obviously, he was there. What I'm trying to say is I don't know that he was responsible for the initial attacks. And what do you mean when I say initial attacks? Well, the attacks that Corey Wise and all the rest of the Central Park Five described would be the initial attacks. Okay. Now, why do I think that Reyes wouldn't know anything about the initial attacks? Well, there's a letter here from someone named Pedro Hernandez that he was locked up with in Clinton Correctional Facility. And basically what that letter says is, we'll look here. We're not going to read the whole thing. It says, I first met Reyes in 19 such and such. Okay, they were housed together in Clinton Correctional Facility. And now he's going to say how he knows about the Central Park 5 case and Patricia Miley. He said he was walking down in the park that night and he was high on PCP dust. Mm-hmm. And he heard someone screaming and he went to where the screaming was coming from. And he saw a bunch of guys and they were around a part where they're joggers and saw a woman on the ground. And he went over to where they were and asked what was going on. And one of the guys said to him, "Nothing, we're just having a little fun." So Reyes asked if he can hang out too. And the guys told him yes. So they were all raping her in, I don't know what that word is. And she was still screaming. So one of the guys keep on hitting her in the face so she can quiet down. And then Reyes also was raping her and he saw something evil about her in her eyes, like if they were ready to come out. So he started to hit her with the rock in her. We're playing with her body and hitting her. And this was all of them. Reyes had told me, not just him. Reyes told me they were all down with the rape and him to Reyes. But that's all I knew about that case because Reyes told me all this himself from the time we were in Clinton till he left the jail and went somewhere else. So that's pretty damning if it's true that Reyes was telling people in prison that he wasn't the main actor in this case. He came later. This is what he's saying. So this could be possible. This is a possibility. The question is, why is nobody bringing it up today? How come nobody talks about this? So if we go back to 1989, when these boys were questioned, the Central Park Five, not Mateus Reyes, Corey Wise was questioned by an officer, Jonesa. And at the time, this wasn't recorded, but it is recorded in some notes. Corey Wise mentioned a kid named Rudy playing with Patricia Miley's tits. And he said that Rudy took the Walkman. He also described a fanny pack that she had the Walkman in. Okay, so why is the name Rudy significant? We don't know anybody. We don't know any Rudys. Who is Rudy? Why did he mention someone named Rudy?
Reyes.
Well, it just so happens in the book, Your Eyes or Your Life, the true story of the Central Park jogger rapist, written by Richard Siracusa, who was Mateus Reyes's lawyer in a couple of cases prior to the Central Park case. He didn't handle all of Matias Reyes's cases. He was his lawyer in the past. Anyway, he writes this book, and he writes it about Matias Reyes just being this vicious guy. But then he also talks about the Central Park 5 case a little bit. But he mentions the name Rudy. He said that he had went to a place where Reyes worked, or a bodega. He says, I'm going to read from here. It said, I remembered interviewing Papo, the owner of the bodega where Reyes worked in 1989. As I was questioning him, one of his workers indicated that he knew Reyes and that he answered to the name of Rudy. Papo nodded in agreement. He did tell me that he was also known as Tony. Okay, so now we have a name, Rudy, mentioned by Corey Wise, that this guy remembers Reyes was known as. Now, Reyes had several aliases, it turns out. But that's not the only thing. There's also the point that no one ever mentioned that Walkman being in a fanny pack. It wasn't mentioned in any of the videos. It's not known to the news. It wasn't released anywhere except in that note from Officer Jonesa. Reyes talked about a Walkman in 2002 when he confessed. He talks about taking her headset and a fanny pack. So the question is, how did Corey Wise know about that Walkman? It's not mentioned anywhere else. Never before has it mentioned, except for in Corey Wise's testimony to Officer Jonesa. There's not mention of this Walkman. So we have to figure out, how the hell did Corey Wise know about a Walkman being in a fanny pack? And how the hell did he know somebody named Rudy? Now, if you also listen to Antron McCrae's testimony, he speaks of another Puerto Rican kid in a hoodie, but he doesn't know his name. Nobody knows who that person is. Who is that guy in the hoodie? Nobody can figure out his name. Nobody knows his name is. And they were in a big group of kids where nobody knew one another. A Rudy could just show up and come up and be a part of this rape. But that's not all. The author also speaks about Reyes speaking to him about having a partner in crime during some of the crimes that he committed prior to his arrest in August of 1989. See, Reyes was also arrested in 89, but he was arrested in August while the rest of them were arrested in April. So what you have is now Reyes saying that he had this partner, and his partner's name was Steve, much like Steven Lopez, right? What it says later is the description of an associate with whom he had committed other crimes closely resembled the physical features of Steve Lopez. The description he gives is of a kid who has hair much like Steve Lopez's, like we see, but also he has this scar on the side of his face. And if you look closely at photos of Steven Lopez, he has a very similar scar to what Reyes said that this person also had. Now, Reyes was asked about this later, and he gets really angry at Nancy Ryan when she asked him about it. And I have the audio for that, but I won't play it for this video. We're already over an hour. I will leave it in the notes. So the thought is that if Lopez and Reyes knew one another, then that might explain how Reyes was able to, participate that night. Now we know about Reyes having a fight with Corey in Rikers Island, 1990. So they have this fight, and we don't really know what that fight was about. We can speculate, but they have a fight. Later, Reyes says he runs into Corey again at another prison many, many years later, and they recognize each other, and they have a conversation, at which Corey says, "Oh, it's nothing." He blows it off.
He said, "I would like to apologize to you. We had a fight, reconciling about the TV, so forth." So I'm saying, it ain't about nothing, man. We here. It's not gonna free neither one of us. Don't worry about it.
That's his version of the story today. However, we have lots of notes that state that Reyes was afraid for his life and wanted to be away from Corey Wise. And he starts to tell people that, hey, I did this crime and this other guy's locked up for it. That's what he's whispering to people and trying to get people to understand that he did this crime, but there's another guy arrested for it. All that while trying to get away from Corey Wise because he fears for his life and that it presents a problem for him. And officers agree that Corey Wise is a danger to him as long as he is the one who actually did the crime. Now, the question is, how did Reyes know that Wise knew that Reyes had done this thing? Like, why was he in danger? If he didn't speak to Wise about it, and he says in testimony he did not speak to Wise about this case at all.
So he's never said to you in any of your conversations with him, whether they were 12 years ago or they were since you've been together here at Auburn.
Well, together here, the only thing that I actually said to him when I approached him was I apologized to him because I wanted to make amends because we got into a fight in that same house back in 1989 when we was at. Like I said to you before earlier, I didn't approach him in a way to speak to him about the case because I don't know what would have been his reaction.
Wise says the same thing. They didn't speak to each other about the case. How the hell did Corey Wise know that Reyes was the one who did the crime that he was locked up for? What was the danger of Corey Wise if Corey Wise did not know that Reyes was the person who was responsible for him doing all this time? That's never explained. It's not explained anywhere, but we have all this paperwork that shows you that Reyes was in fear of his life from Corey Wise. Furthermore, the Armstrong report says there is also reason to question Reyes's claim that a chance meeting with Wise in the yard at Auburn in 2001 triggered the remorse that led to his confession. Corrections officers have checked the movement records of both Wise and Reyes in 2001 at Auburn and assert that it is not possible that Reyes and Wise were at any time together in the yard. If that's so, how is this story even being taken seriously? The answer to that question is fairly simple. The media is not looking at the facts. They're turning a blind eye. An article online at a certain newspaper that will remain nameless was sent the facts by someone who cares about this case. They sent the writer of the article the actual facts, the actual documents that you're seeing in this video, and the person deleted the post, did not respond to this person. This person went on to send them multiple emails that they did not respond to. So they've had this information for a long time and they just refuse to look at it. Why? Because the narrative is more important than the facts. This is unfortunately the case for a lot of things these days. But let's get back to Reyes for a minute. If in fact it is the case that Reyes and Wise did not meet that day, then what is the motivation for Matias Reyes coming out with this information? We got to ask. And I think some of the answers are shown here in the Armstrong report. Let's take a look. Here, the report states, another simpler and less speculative motive for Reyes to have come forward to exculpate the defendants is that he won a favorable prison assignment for doing so. Purporting to fear Wise's reaction to his revelation, Reyes demanded protection at the time he came forward. Within a month, he was transferred to the Clinton Assessment Program's Prepared Unit at Clinton Correctional Facility. According to state corrections personnel, this is considered the safest and one of the most desirable locations in the New York State correction system. In addition to the Armstrong report, you have the Siracusa book on Reyes stating this. The panel suggested that their investigation revealed evidence that Reyes came forward as a result of threats delivered through the underground prison communication system, and or he acted in order to get a desired change in prison assignment. So that prison assignment thing comes up again here. It goes on to say, this was a more plausible conclusion. Reyes had no conscience, as evidenced by the rape and murder of Lourdes Gonzalez, which is another woman that he raped and murdered. Wise had allegedly become a member of the Bloods. I don't have information on his membership into the Bloods gang or membership into some Muslim gang, but it has been mentioned that he was high ranking in some sort of gang or group within the prison system. It said, a violent gang, both in prison and on the street. It was more likely that Reyes and Wise recognized one another, and Reyes had come forward to curry favor with the prison authorities to get a transfer before the Bloods had a chance to seek retribution. It also says, how did Reyes know that Wise was one of the Central Park Five or recognize him? All he had to do was keep his mouth shut, and he would, assumedly, have nothing to fear from Corey Wise and the Bloods. So let's do a bit of a recap here. You had about 40 or so teenage males who run into a park, Central Park, and cause all types of problems. They attack and harass people in the park, beat multiple people up, and then you have a rape. Now, coincidentally, the rape and all these other attacks happened at the same time. They all seem to have happened with similar weapons. So whereas we know that the weapons that were used to beat up the first three joggers and the bum were a pipe. So a blunt object was used. We also know that Yusuf Salam had a knife, and Steve Lopez was said to have used a knife to cut the leg of Patricia Miley. So they get arrested. There's loads of physical evidence to put them in that location, whereas they have hair, there's blood on them, there's semen found on them. All this stuff is found on their person. The jury of 6, which, by the way, I didn't mention, jury was a very mixed jury. I think there were 4 white jurors, 4 black jurors, and a couple of others. So they had a mixed jury, was convinced that they were guilty of these crimes. So what happens next? They do their sentences. They're convicted and they do their full sentence. Okay, so that's another thing I want to say, that I don't think that these kids should go back to prison. That's not what I'm saying. I think they've done their time. They've been through the system. They don't need more time or anything like that. However, I think it's not a good idea to celebrate them as some types of heroes or victims of some racist criminal justice system, when that doesn't seem to be the case. So that's what we have up to this point. And then you have Matias Reyes coming out and saying that he did this all by himself. So we're looking at motives. Matias Reyes, in my mind and in the mind of many other people, he's been referred to as a psychopath. So the mind of a psychopath is such that it likes attention. So another possible motive for all of this is that now Reyes is somewhat of a hero. He's been elevated to hero status. You see his picture all over the internet. He's been interviewed by ABC News and other news organizations. So his face is known. He's out there. He has gotten some amount of notoriety. As you see this same kind of thing coming from mass shooters or serial killers. They want some sort of notoriety, and the media is more than willing to give it to them. So you get more of them. You know, when you give these people what they want, you're going to get copycats. But Matias Reyes certainly seems to be enjoying his time in the spotlight, as do the Central Park Five. But one thing that I haven't mentioned is the politics behind this all. There is a good amount of politics behind this whole entire story, which starts off with Bill de Blasio. Bill de Blasio campaigned on the idea that he would settle this civil court case that the Central Park Five had against the criminal justice system in New York City. So Bill de Blasio campaigned on the idea that he was going to bring more justice by giving the Central Park Five a payout that he thought they deserved. He campaigned on this to get more black votes. This is obviously what his agenda was. And he went to Al Sharpton about this. Now, Al Sharpton, if you didn't know, was involved in the case. He was involved in the Central Park Five case. He was there for a lot of this. His lawyers represented at least one of the Central Park group. It wasn't one of the five. It was, I believe it was Michael Briscoe. But Bill de Blasio made plenty of promises, and one was to reward the Central Park Five.
There are those who think that what I said during the campaign was just rhetoric, just political talk in the interest of getting elected.
This year, a new mayor took over and quickly paid up. The Five will receive a total of $41 million.
Central Park Five got to get paid.
And it seems they have gotten paid, with help from Sarah Burns and Ken Burns, who created the Central Park Five documentary. They did so stating that their intent was to get them paid. In an interview with Variety magazine, Burns said that he wanted to get the Central Park Five film a theatrical release to bring pressure on the city to settle the suit. We're filmmakers first and foremost, and we want to make a difference. So having a theatrical release will, I think, amplify the pressure on the city to settle so they can put their lives back together. Curiously, Sarah Burns worked for the law firm that represented the Central Park Five's case and who was planning on getting them a big settlement from New York City. Perhaps it's not a wonder that the Central Park Five documentary was so one-sided and didn't present any of the facts as stated by the police officers, the district attorney, or the Armstrong report. Instead, the film made it seem as though that the boys were only convicted based upon their testimonies on the videos, which is just not true, as I've presented in this video. As we now know, the police didn't even know about most of the victims that the Five mentioned in their testimonies at the time. They didn't know how bad these people had been beaten. They didn't know a lot of this stuff. But these guys gave it up. Everything in this video should show you that they are not innocent. Definitely not innocent of beating up the other joggers and the bum. Meanwhile, if you hear them tell it, let me just play you what they say from their own words.
With young men that were hanging out. Okay. And some of us, we were young, 14, we were followers. You hang out with older guys, they say, come on, you come along. That was it. We can't say that. We can't talk about everybody's actions that night. Okay. But our actions were we weren't there to commit any crime. We were just being followers because we were the youngest.
We knew that we didn't have any involvement in this. We knew we didn't even have any involvement in any of the other crimes that happened in the park. But yet, as Antron said, we were all being blamed for this whole thing.
The cashews on this guy to say something like this. I mean, up until I think it was 2002, Raymond Santana was saying that he had done everything else except for the rape. And I think Yusef Salaam said the same thing in testimony. You can find paperwork on this. And now they're saying they didn't have anything to do with anything that night. It's utterly ridiculous. And yet so many Americans are allowing them to go on and tell these stories unchallenged without asking them any questions about these facts. Which brings me to my conclusion. The Central Park Five have to be the most celebrated snitches in Black history. They basically have embraced victimhood and done so to the tune of $42 million. Victimhood indeed does pay. We all know this. We're all well aware that playing the victim does have its rewards in the end. But at what expense? What are we doing to the country when we have lies? So many people I know, including friends and family, believe that America is such a racist place. And this case is similar to that of the Tawana Brawley case. It's similar to that of the Jussie Smollett case. The facts don't really matter to people. What does matter to them is a narrative and preserving that narrative at any cost. And now you see why this is such a complicated case. It's far from being as cut and dry as the media is presenting it. It's far from being as cut and dry as the Netflix series presented it. And it's far from being as cut and dry as a documentary presented it. While these young men may not have penetrated the Central Park jogger, there has not been evidence to prove that they were not there. These men, as I have read it, were not exonerated. Their case was vacated, yes, but the two things are very different. My name is Chi Brown. I appreciate you all watching this. Like, subscribe, comment. I know the comments on this are bound to be lively. I appreciate you all, and I'm out.
Dwayne, appreciate you putting that up there. Yeah, that's a lot of things. That's a lot of things make sense. If y'all look, when they were showing you the blood evidence, you look, I mean, you kind of watch it quick. It'll tell you a lot of things were not conclusive. I think that played a major part with it not being conclusive. When you deal with a jury, what people don't know, when you deal with a convicted person on a crime, it has to be without a reason of a doubt. And when you're showing evidence and it's saying not conclusive, although the jury did convict them, I'm sure they was able to get a lot of things pulled back. The fact that it's still stated not conclusive. They hung themselves. In one of the documents he was speaking on, he was showing, I don't know if y'all read it at the top, it spoke about a guy, Ortigas. They were actually told not to interview with the correct. They were told not to interview, and that with the FBI or the CIA, and it was from the Attorney General of New York. They would not let them testify. It was two people. They were both Hispanics. They said they was told by the Attorney General not to interview with the department or with the police or the FBI or the CIA. So all these were involved too. I didn't know the CIA and all them was involved with this. I'm sure that guy came forward. Him coming forward, saying he was the sole raper by himself made no sense, and not to have any evidence. But one thing about how life works, that's why it's coming back around.
Yep.
It's gonna, and it needs to come back around. Like he said, they did their time. I think that the more time that it be given, the money you taking from the city, Donald Trump, and it seems that you were correct. So I apologize that I don't have to tell him to their face. Never see him, but that's for me. Because I mean, based off of what I saw from the first documentary and what they said, was still they were out there. We knew they were there, but they made it as though they were just out, a bunch of kids having fun, and they actually weren't. They turned into a rape. I was a young man. I mean, we went out, we beat people up. We ain't never gonna rape nobody. Yeah, we did some damage to some people. So I understand where they were at. I grew up during that time period. They're a little younger than me, I think. But I was out there and we did the same thing, beat people up. It was a mess. But never rape. Never rape. It's bad that these guys are trying to push themselves out. They're sure they hadn't come to grips with reality or telling the truth. The young man showing him, you hear that statement, they weren't coerced. He told us she scratched me, in my face right here. The pants, he said penis did touch. He said stayed in the pants, but the penis touched her. She talked with him long enough to come back and say it did do it, but they claim it was still his pants. These guys are just bad-minded young people, really bad-minded, and because they've never actually admitted their crimes to feel as though they got away with them, the push that they're innocent doesn't show them the maturity. They're still a danger. That's what I look at, because you never actually came to grips with it. The fact that you can go out and say, we never participate, that's not what you said in the videos. So it's like, hold on for a minute, didn't you hear what you said? So now they're going to push this narrative because it got money, and then this hurts people of color that are innocent who are wrongly convicted. When you get these guys, they're going to push this documentary. They're going to push it because it's at the hands of a black man saying, not a white man. It's in your own exposure. It doesn't matter what color, but it's unfortunate. They'll use this to justify how many blacks are not innocent. For me, I did know a lot of things did say inconclusive. He didn't state that either because his end was showing they were guilty. There were things that if you look, did you read that Love Doctor? It definitely said it said it was inconclusive. And he did state earlier that, DNA technology was about 2 years old at the time, but it was inconclusive. But you just have to mention that. But their testimony alone to me, you hung yourself.
Yeah.
I appreciate, I appreciate those y'all that hung in here with us to watch it as well. Definitely appreciate y'all, your time. We know we've been in here a long time tonight. We do a hardball, you guys. The federal, he said he was just gonna stick his head in. He stayed in for the whole documentary. We appreciate you and your wife, definitely always in my Palau. I do that, Layla Palau, Morning Palau, then Chicago a lot. They know me, I Palau, I sent them out because I'm a praying man. But I definitely I encourage our people and people in general, do the right thing. We all got a pass. Do the right thing. Be clear for yourself.
Come on.
That's all I tell you about. Please do the right thing. Appreciate all of y'all. Appreciate Faye P, everybody on there. Staying with us. I know someone probably felt like they said, I got to go to each other. Been here all night. Love Dollar, we kept here. This is as long as you've been out the 2
Yeah, man, look at him. Okay.
Yeah.
You getting better. Well, I mean, you gonna have to stay up because Stasha said she looking to crack that back. So you need to be up. You gotta make a turn. Well, she already. Well, you don't have to make one. You all want, so don't worry about that. No, we appreciate you, Andrew, everybody watching. We appreciate everybody. Appreciate Boston. Appreciate our man spending wonderful daughter winning with that win and yeah, Joe. Appreciate everybody.
With the potato, got to mention that.
Yeah, she did great. She know we're proud of her. Great job. We appreciate everybody. Y'all know next week we'll be back here. We'll look do the same thing, and that's what we look to do. Bring truth out, because I mean that change. That's bad, man. That this. If you could send me the link personally, I want to put it on my Twitter. Put it on my. I think some asked on here. Some want to go back and show. It needs to get out. People to get. Just put let people examine for themselves. I want to post it on my. Appreciate you too, say. I want to post it on my Twitter, post it on my Instagram, post it. I want people to see it. Let people see for themselves, then you be the judge. It's not that long it's really not that long of a documentary where a person can watch it. So if you'll be kind enough to text that to the group chat, yes, sir, I'll send out those that follow me on Twitter. Someone asked you to post it on here if you will. We'll try to post it on our page or put it in the chat. Appreciate y'all guys. We're going to get ready to try to shut it down because I got to try to get a little rest tonight. I get a couple hours. Then I got to be ready tomorrow night. For some reason, they want to put me to work. I don't know why. They want me to work. I'm going to do it. I ain't going to worry about it. I'm going to do it. I love my job. So ain't no thing about it. I always say that when I come, I say, you know what? I am not going to be up here alone. I do every time. Y'all know I do. I said, listen. I'm going to him. Listen, I said, I'm going to go ahead and get this done. I'm going to get out. I look around in my clock. I say, Shabbat day, I'm telling you, every time I say, listen, I'm going to him. I said, listen, it never fails. I get stuck for whatever reason. I said, you know what? I'm going to him. I said, I'm just going to work, and that's it. And I look around. I said, I'll be like, oh, my goodness, it's 4 o'clock. How did I do this? I get through and I said, this is it. I get out here 7 o'clock. I look around, it's 8:30, almost 9. I said, what happened? So just know it's never intentional. But you know what I think? If I write up a script, I can get out. Because you got to stay with your script. I'm trying to write up a script. I'm just coming. I'm saying, just stick with like it. Just stick and look at it and say, listen, that's it. So I can't do it.
It'll never happen.
It'll never happen. Oh man, there go my hope. There go my future. I had a little hope, so I said maybe I could do this. But again, we appreciate y'all. He said he was against Christianity a long time ago, whoever that was. So listen, we appreciate all y'all. Confederate keep hanging in there. We'll look to see. I appreciate you again, Love Doctor, for bringing that to the table for us. All our wonderful listener followers, guys. We will look to see you all next week. See y'all.
See y'all.
We're about to take it back. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Tony and Lee on the radio. Dr. Joe's therapy on the radio. The love got me going live on the radio. 2 mics and a mind on the radio. Turned up 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 on the radio. 2 mics and a mind. 2 mics and a mind. 2 mics and a mind. 2 mics and a mind.
All right, you do something better, I'll do something better, and we'll be better together. Until next week.
Y'all. Let's see y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all.